December 1991, a massive worldwide television audience watched a 24-year-old American earn $2 million for 2 hours on a tennis court.
Game, set, and match.
For some, it was the high point of the modern game. For others, it was just another step in its slow degeneration, dragging it further and further away from its ancient origins, its manners, and its mysteries.
Let's get one thing clear right at the start of this programme. From now on, when we talk about tennis, we're talking about the ancient game of real tennis. The short history of the brash upstart lawn tennis has been one of constant change. Ironically, the game from which it developed has hardly changed at all in 800 years. This most traditional of sports was in its day the most popular, and not just among the rich and royal. In 16th century France, there were 2 courts for every church in the country. Lawn tennis has taken almost everything from the ancient game and gone on to embrace the ambiguous benefits of sponsorship and television, while real tennis has been left clutching at its traditions. But now, after 3 centuries of decline, the ancient code is staging a comeback.
It's the best ball game in the world. It's the best ball game I've ever played, and I've played quite a few.
It's a marvellous balance between finesse and fitness.
There are so many different angles, there are so many different spins, there are so many different shots, there are so many different tactics, whether you're playing at singles and doubles. It's as much an intellectual challenge as a sporting one.
A combination of between squash, tennis, and doing the Sunday Times crossword, probably.
And once you've played a couple of times, most people who need a challenge or want a challenge get hooked. You do get hooked.
I was actually looking for something, the most gentlemanly game I could find, the one that was likely to cause the least antagonism whenever I played. Well, I always had a problem with lawn tennis, which was the net was too high and the court too small. I think there are a lot of other people with this problem as well. And the great thing about this court with all the walls is that it allows one a little bit more scope. And as somebody said to me, it takes 2 years to learn all the rules and the rest of your life to learn how to apply them. So, and that's really the thing, is that it's, you know, it's not all about power, it's not all about fitness, it's about skill and just being able to place the ball in exactly the right place. I mean, I came into the game because I enjoyed the history, the traditions and the gentlemanliness of the game, the manners and everything else.
To see good tennis, what diviner joy can fill our leisure or our minds employ? Let other people play at other things. The king of games is still the game of kings. The clearest clue to the game's origin is the court itself. The space must have existed already and the game developed to fit. Tennis is first mentioned in 12th century church manuscripts. From these writings, it seems certain that the game developed in France among the clergy, using the cloister in the centre of a typical monastery as a sort of tennis court. The sloping roof, supported at intervals by pillars, looks like doorways into a number of monks' cells, and the grille is almost certainly the window through which monks communicated with the outside world. At first, the church hierarchy encouraged the sport, which developed into something that would later be recognised as a game of tennis. It was known as jeu de paume and played with the hand. Soon, though, the archbishops realised their monks were spending more time playing than praying. Tennis was banished from the monasteries. But by the 13th century, the game had become popular with the rich and famous, which in the days before Hello magazine meant royalty. During the 14th and 15th centuries, the French kings now confirmed tennis junkies, erected buildings purely for the purpose of playing tennis. Courts appeared in the Louvre, at the Château d'Amboise and at Fontainebleau. The game's popularity spread from the nobility to a general public, who would play the game in any available courtyard. Large amounts of money were gambled and the crowds attracted street vendors selling everything from tennis lessons to mind-bending potions. Soon they were dancing in the streets, so tennis, for the masses, was banned. But if you had your own palace to play in, well, that was okay. At about the same time, tennis became very popular in England and so was quickly banned here as well. The law decreed that saints' days and holy days should be used to practice archery, not tennis. It was like telling teenagers who enjoy a good rave to join the territorial army. The authorities meant business, though. Anyone caught playing tennis risked 6 days in prison. But tennis remained popular with the privileged, although some players in France were a bit peeved by the arrival of the first woman player, Margot the Magnificent. She beat many men, thanks apparently to a wicked backhand. Here for the first time, the possibility of a racket is mentioned. The development of the racket was not universally popular. Some felt the purity of the sport had been diluted and that subtlety would be supplanted by power. Jim Courier wouldn't have complained, but the Dutch scholar Erasmus wrote in 1524, "Let's leave the net-covered instrument to the fisherman. It is more elegant to use the hand." During the 16th century, Henry VIII spearheaded the golden era of tennis in England. He was young, athletic, good-looking, and not particularly inclined to fighting wars. That meant more time for tennis. He had courts at many of his palaces and built one at Hampton Court. The king loved gambling as much as tennis, but unfortunately wasn't much good at either. On one occasion he lost £46 at tennis and then a further £116 at dice trying to win the money back. Nowadays that'd be about 200,000 quid. Henry's French counterpart, the equally gorgeous Francis I, enjoyed nothing more than swinging his racket in front of the ladies of the court. He loved the game so much that he built a ship complete with a tennis court on board. It proved about as successful as the British during the first week of Wimbledon. And if you think parental pressure is a recent phenomenon in the world of tennis, check out Charles IX, Francis's grandson, whose mother gave him a racket when he was 2. Mum herself was so into tennis she invented a new hairstyle, coiffure en raquette. It wasn't all the rage, but it was part of the tennis craze, which peaked at the end of the 16th century, when a tour of Paris revealed there were no fewer than 250 courts. But as royal patronage had led to the game's huge popularity, a lack of interest from royalty led to its decline. In England, Oliver Cromwell became famous for banning fun games and royalty, while in France, the royal family grew less sporty and more nutty with every generation. When clock enthusiast Louis XIV became convinced he was the centre of the universe, the French people decided they'd had enough. In 1788, in the real tennis court at Versailles, the citizens of France declared the formation of the National Assembly and scored the first points of the French Revolution. In France, that was the end of royalty, let alone royal patronage, and on both sides of the Channel, many of the courts fell into disrepair or were used for other purposes. During the 19th century, the gentler classes moved from the city into the country. Although they were awfully keen to play tennis in their big back gardens, the real tennis ball refused to bounce on grass. Then, eureka, vulcanised rubber and a ball that would. Major Wingfield published the rules of lawn tennis in 1873 and paved the way for tantrums, frilly knickers and overpriced strawberries.
Well, that's about enough of the Open University stuff. I think it's time we had a go at this. And with me is Sue Barker, the former world #3 at lawn tennis. But this is the first time I've managed to get her down here to have a game of the real thing. So how's the racket feel? It's quite an odd shape, isn't it?
It actually makes my Max ply look really modern. I was asking for a graphite one, but they don't seem to make them.
No, they're still all wood, all virtually handmade. And also, you held it a little bit further up the racket, so it won't seem quite so heavy when you hold it like that.
I think I might need a few tips on this, I've got to
But
say.
it looks sort of warped, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, is that the right way to hold it?
Yes, you hold it with this sort of long, straight side down below because you sort of cut or block the ball back. You don't hit a nice topspin like you do at lawn tennis.
Well, that's going to be a problem because I've only got a Western grip.
Oh, well, it'd be fun to see what you play like. How about the ball?
It's very heavy, and I've got to say, it doesn't bounce at all.
Well, I think the best way to learn is to have a game straight off. So I'll serve, you go down that end, okay?
Right. Where do I go? Is this about right?
Yep, bit further back, just a few yards. I'm going to serve from here, and remember that the ball has got to bounce at least once on the porch up your end. And you try to get the ball back over the net, just like in normal tennis, okay?
Right.
Here goes. points. Just like in squash, you can play off the walls and roofs as well.
Oh, good, I'll use
Yeah,
them.
that's good.
Oh. Oh! What's happened there?
There are a couple of quick ways of winning points. From the server's end, you can score by hitting the ball directly into the winning gallery, or alternatively straight into the grill set in the back wall. From the other end, the receiver can score by hitting the ball into the dedans.
Well, you seem to have got the hang of that one all right, but from now on the game starts to get just a bit trickier.
For a start, the serving is always done from the same end because the two ends of a tennis court are not the same. At the receiver's end, known as the hazard end, there's an angled section of wall that makes the ball bounce awkwardly. It's called the tambour and gives the player at the service end a distinct advantage.
Oh. Oh!
Where did
That's
that
not
go?
fair, I haven't got one of those down that end to aim at.
Basically, it's easier to win points from the service end, so that's where you want to be. But you don't get to serve just because it's the end of a game and it's your turn. You have to earn the service by laying chases. The chase is the key to understanding this sport. In lawn tennis, if you don't reach a ball before the second bounce, you lose the point. In real tennis, if the ball bounces twice anywhere in the lined area of the court or flies into any of the side galleries except the winning gallery, a chase has been laid. The point's not been won or lost, just put on ice. It's like playing just the first half of a point. The receiver wants to score chases because when he's laid two, he earns the right to play at the service end. Every chase has a value which depends on where the second bounce falls, in this case the 5-yard line. That's known as chase 5. After changing ends, the new server now has to defend chase 5 to win the whole point. The point's played normally, except the player now at the receiver's end must hit all his shots, so the second bounce lands closer to the back wall than the 5-yard line. If it doesn't, he loses the chase and the point. The closer to the back wall a chase is laid, the harder it is to beat. In part 2, we'll be seeing two of Britain's top players in action. Try to remember there are 3 ways to win a point. You can force an error from your opponent, you can hit the ball into one of the winning openings, or you can beat a chase. But as Sue Barker will testify, there are many more ways to lose a point.
Sue, well played. You're picking an awful lot up on the floor there.
It's hard work, I'm absolutely exhausted, but I'll definitely be back for another game.
Right, well, we'll be back too in just a couple of minutes with all the action from the Laurent-Perrier Masters. It's good stuff there, isn't it? Hello and welcome to Queen's Club in West London. Queen's is more often associated with the grass court game, or lawners as we call it. But in fact, it's the real tennis court that's been the centre of attention this week. It's been the venue for one of the top events in the tennis calendar, the Laurent-Perrier Masters. 8 of the world's top players have been competing in a round robin to establish 4 semi-finalists.
Former world champion Chris Ronaldson rolled back the years to beat the current world #1 Lachlan Ducar in the round-robin phase. In the semi-finals, he played the Jimmy Connors role to perfection, staging a 4-set comeback to level the match at 2 sets all. His opponent, Chris Bray, at 26, a full 16 years, Ronaldson's junior, countered experience with youthful staying power. He rode the storm in a 2.5-hour marathon to win 6-3 in the 5th set. The only overseas player in the last 4, Australia's Robert Fay, plays most of his tennis across the Channel in Bordeaux. He's the rising star of the real tennis world and widely tipped as a future world #1. He certainly looked full of confidence in his semi-final. But British amateur champion Julian Snow hadn't lost a game all week and certainly isn't